In Colombia, the National Registrar, Alexander Vega, announced that he will not request the recount of votes to the National Electoral Council. In the framework of World Water Day, the United Nations warned that at least 2,000 million people live without access to safe drinking water. And also, South African President Cyril Ramaphosa said in a live television broadcast that the restrictive COVID-19 regulations that have weighed on the nation's struggling economy for 2 years will be removed on Wednesday. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Gladys Quesada from the teleSUR studios in Caracas, Venezuela. We begin with the news. Stay with us. And now we begin. In Colombia, the National Registrar, Alexander Vega, announced that he will not request the recount of votes to the National Electoral Council. The notification was made during the development of the Table for Electoral Guarantees convened by the national government and integrated by representatives of all organizations with political purposes. For this part, the national government was represented by the Ministry of Defense, the CNE, the National Civil Registry, as well as international electoral surveillance organizations. In such sense, Vega indicated that decided from the initial decision and having listened to all parties while clarifying that he had not presented any petition before the electoral body.
President in charge. For the calm of the political forces, I will not present a request for a recount of votes. Obviously, it is also the right of the political organizations that want to present it. But on the part of the registry, we will not present it.
The Ecuadorian Legislative Assembly holds on Tuesday the second debate on the Organic Law Project for Investment Attraction, submitted by the nation's president, Guillermo Lasso. The Assembly members will discuss the proposal presented by the National Executive in order to evaluate its impact on the country's economic situation. The legislators are reportedly divided 50-50 between those for and against the new law. The spokesperson for the presidency, Carlos Gijón, informed that the law intends to attract around $30 billion in foreign investment to generate new jobs in the nation. On the other hand, the Democratic Left Party and the Union for Hope Party indicated that they will not support the investment project because it does not benefit the Ecuadorian people. The Brazilian Superior Court of Justice will evaluate on Tuesday whether former prosecutor and ex-coordinator of the dismantled Lava Jato judicial operation, Deltan Dallagnol, should compensate former President Luis Inácio Lula da Silva for moral damages. The former prosecutor had accused Lula da Silva in the press in 2016 of being the head of an alleged criminal organization, a fact that has not been proven before the law. The founder of the Workers' Party denounced on several occasions that the Lava Jato judicial operation, presided over by Dallagnol, acted with hidden interest and without evidence. Deltan Dallagnol will have to pay about $200,000 to Lula for moral damages if found guilty. The Bolivian government and the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights signed an agreement to implement the recommendations of the interdisciplinary group of independent experts that investigated massacres in 2019. With the signing of the agreement, a working group was set up to implement the recommendations of the experts. The event was attended by Bolivia's Chancellor, Rogelio Mayra, the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights Executive Secretary, Tania Renom, and its Commissioner Speaker, Joel Hernandez. According to the Human Rights Commission, the pact reflects the concerns of the victims of the massacre and exposes those responsible for the massacres perpetrated by the state security forces in Sacaba and Sankara during the coup d'etat against the government of former President Evo Morales in 2019. In Paraguay, thousands of farmers and transporters gathered in the capital to defend the reduction of fuel prices, the right to exploit the land, among other issues common to both sectors. Despite efforts by the authorities, the streets at the city center are too crowded for vehicle traffic. Farmers occupied spaces next to the governmental and legislative institutions and close to the roads. Likewise, farmers led by the National Intersectoral Coordinating Committee and the Farmers Federation are demanding a law on agricultural insurance. Transporters demand lower fuel prices, concerted action with marchers on demands such as the repeal of the so-called Zavala-Riera law, which prevents the extension of land use. In Santiago de Cuba, the eastern part of the island, Barranca is a community where the legacy of Haitian migration is still alive. A festivity of relevance in March is the anniversary of the Gaga Bearer Group of Barranca. The Gaga Bearer Group recently turned 111 years old, and in this occasion, the usual celebration of 3 days was reduced to only 1 day. However, it was celebrated with joy and high participation. Activities began with the children's contest and awards of visual arts, followed by the presentation of various dance and bearer groups throughout the day, and it ended up with a parade of the Great Gaga, where all participating groups joined together showing off their talents. At the rhythm of the drums, the African bell, the Chinese bugle, and the snail's blow as instrument. This festivity is a way to encourage people from the community and enhance the Haitian traditions. We'll take a short break now. Join us again after this. Welcome back to From the South. In the framework of World Water Day, the United Nations warned that at least 2,000 million people live without access to safe drinking water. The agency's study reveals that Africa is home to half of the population using unprotected water sources, while in sub-Saharan Africa, only 24% of people have access to safe drinking water as in basic sanitation facilities. The report also highlighted that there are differences in access between rich and poor, as the poor who live in informal settlements and do not have piped water services often pay between 10 and 20 times more for this resource. The agency stressed that inclusive policies are needed to achieve fair access to water resources, while recalling that between 2000 and 2018, there were more than 350 conflicts worldwide over water-related claims. And now we move on to other topics. Russia and Ukraine carried out the first exchange of prisoners since the beginning of the Russian special military operation in the Donbass. According to the Commissioner for Human Rights of Russia, Tatiana Muskalkova, in the first exchange, 9 Russian soldiers were handed over in exchange for the mayor of the Ukrainian city of Melitopol. The official indicated that some of them were on a list drawn up by her office on the basis of intelligence data and information received by the Russian authorities. Muskalkova informed that they are in possession of about 500 Ukrainian servicemen and that her nation is coordinating further exchanges through the Red Cross. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz dismissed calls to boycott Russian energy supplies. Scholz said that Germany's position on the energy boycott question remains unchanged during a briefing in Berlin alongside European Parliament President Roberta Metsola. He stated that the measures were designed to be tolerable for those imposing them, including in the long term. The official also declared that the sanctions already imposed on Russia were hitting its economy. Scholz added that Germany was working to diversify its energy supply, and while this will take time, will eventually have the same effect as the boycott. Despite the sanctions, European countries paid Russia hundreds of millions of dollars each day for energy supplies.
Germany's boycott on this question remains unchanged. Incidentally, this is also true for many other member states that are very dependent on coal, gas and oil, much more so than Germany. And no one should be left standing in the rain in this regard. But we have decided to make ourselves independent of imports of coal, gas and oil from Russia as quickly as possible, and we are working on this with great speed and intensity. and if succeeds to implement this quickly, then it effects results automatically. In some cases, intensive construction work is still required, and contracts must be concluded worldwide. We are working on this together with high intensity everywhere in Europe.
In Syria, students and university professors carried out acts of solidarity and support for the Russian Federation in the face of the US and Western policies aimed at undermining security and stability of that country. The director of the public relations of the Russian-Syrian community in Damascus, Ina Britkov, thanked the Syrian people for their support to the Russian army and leadership in the special operation carried out in Ukraine, which she said is carried out within the framework of maintaining international peace and security, stressing that Russia and Syria face the powers of imperialism and terrorism. Meanwhile, the Govt, Iman Ali al-Mukarrakh, honored the Russian president, delivered a speech in both Russian and Arabic languages, in which she stressed the message of love and peace that Russia and Syria bring to the whole world. In the United States, an increase in gun violence is reported during the first quarter of this year. According to data published by violence monitoring agencies in the northern nation, there have been 107 shootings so far this year, which implies an increase in violence in the country. Likewise, two-thirds of the country's largest cities reported an increase in homicides in 2021 compared to the previous year, and dozens of cities recorded new highs in murders, mostly by firearms. According to the Independent Surveillance Project's Small Arms Survey, in the United States there are around 393 million guns in the possession of citizens, placing the country as the first in the world with the highest number of this type of artifacts available to the civilian population. And two teachers were killed at a high school in Malmö in southern Sweden, and the student was arrested on suspicion of murder on Tuesday. The motive for this attack was unclear. At a new conference, the head of police said they arrived at Malmö late in school on Monday after getting a report of an attack there and found two women in their 50s with serious injuries. The women died later on Monday. The police arrested an 18-year-old man on the scene and said they were investigating whether he called the police himself. Sweden news media reported that the attacker had been carrying an axe, a knife and a hammer, but authorities said they were still waiting for a forensic examination to determine the weapon used.
Conscious that that kind of incidents can happen, and we have been working on that kind of security in a long time, but it didn't help us this time, and we were not prepared in that moment that it could happen.
And we have more news coming up after a final short break, so stay with us. Welcome back. In Johannesburg on Tuesday, South African President Cyril Ramaphosa made an announcement about COVID-19 regulations. Ramaphosa said in live television broadcast that restrictive COVID-19 regulations that have weighed on the nation's struggling economy for 2 years will be removed on Wednesday, with the national state of disaster also to end soon. The state of disaster currently regulates the country's COVID-19 rules and has been in place since the onset of the pandemic in March 2020. Changes including the removal of a requirement to wear masks outdoors, though this will remain compulsory inside public buildings and on public transport, and also a relaxation of restrictions on the number of people allowed at gatherings or attending venues. A former Central African Republic militia leader accused of war crimes and crimes against humanity appeared before the International Criminal Court for the first time on Tuesday. Maxime Moukom, a leader of an anti-Balaka armed group, appeared on charges of war crimes committed in the Central African Republic between 2013 and 2014. Moukom was the head of the self-proclaimed self-defense militias created in 2013 in reaction to the takeover of Bangui by the Seleka, a coalition of armed groups mainly composed of Muslims opposed to former President François Bozize. He is suspected of, among other things, murder, extermination, deportation or forcible transfer of people, imprisonment, torture, persecution, cruel treatment and mutilation. Hearings at which his charges will be confirmed were set for January 31st, 2023. The International Criminal Court, the ICC, confirmed that violence by the Seleka and anti-Balaka have left thousands dead and hundreds of thousands displaced. Burkina Faso's Transitional Assembly took office on Tuesday, 2 months after a coup widely condemned by neighboring countries. The Assembly will be responsible for voting on reforms drawn during the transition, following former President Roch-Marc Christian Kabore ousting in late January in the face of jihadist violence, which claimed some 2,000 lives and displaced more than 1.7 million people in Burkina over the past 7 years. Only 21 of the 71 deputies have been appointed by military junta leader Lieutenant Colonel Paul-Henri Sandaogo Damiba. Academic Aboukouria Tougani, elected as head of this transitional legislative assembly, said, quote-unquote, "It is a transition to lay the foundations for a fairer society and the moral improvement of public life."
My mandate will be one of commitment to the country in its quest for security, dignity, and honor. With my colleagues in the Transitional Assembly, I will monitor the government's action, defend the interests of the people, and we will take the initiative in proposing laws or any other action in the best interest of the nation.
In the West African country of Guinea, the military junta that seized power 6 months ago has started a national dialogue aimed at restoring civic rule to the nation. On September 5th, 2021, an elite army unit ousted the then President Alpha Condé, the first peacefully and democratically elected president since the country became independent in 1958. Condé, who had organized a referendum to change the constitution to secure a third term in office, which had launched a crackdown on protesters and opposition leaders. In an attempt to contain rising prices on basic commodities, enforce a tax increase while slashing spending on the police and the military, while increasing funding for the office of the President and the National Assembly.
I wanted to organize this national conference called Days of Truth and Forgiveness to give Guineans a unique historic opportunity to look each other in the face, eye to eye, and to speak frankly with an open heart this time. It is up to us and us alone to take such an initiative and convince dear compatriots that no one, I mean no one, will do it for us.
And like this, we have come to the end of this news brief. But remember, you can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also, if you feel so inclined, please join us on social media for all the latest news. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Telegram. For Telesur English, I'm Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.